Welcome everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the chairman and founder of DNA Behaviour International. And today I'm delighted to be hosting another identity conversation. And I have with me Ryan Olds from Ridgevale Financial Planning, who's based in Cleveland, Ohio. And Ryan's been more of a recent user of our financial DNA systems with his clients. So welcome, Ryan. It's great to spend some time with you this afternoon.
Thanks, Hugh. Great to be here.
Okay, so Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your life background and how you got into the financial planning world and starting your own business?
Sure. So I got into financial planning, wealth management, actually in college as an intern. I did an internship with a big insurance company, and that was really my first introduction to anything to do with financial services. And so I went through the internship and decided to go full time after I graduated. Had a pretty great experience, but learned fairly quickly that the insurance world, sales itself wasn't really for me, but I found something that I really liked and intrigued me. And so I decided to stick with it. And once I left the big insurance company, I've been with smaller independent firms along the way. So for basically the past 17 years, I've been in the independent space. And along the way, I also had a couple of partnerships that were great while they were lasting, but didn't end up working out along the way for various reasons, which is okay. And last year, in the middle of the pandemic, I decided to launch my own firm, and so that's where we're at today. So it's been just about a year, almost exactly, that I've been on my own.
Yeah, well, that's always takes a lot of courage to completely go out on your own, particularly when you're younger. It's never an easy step when you ultimately take full responsibility.
Yes, indeed.
So you said something that was interesting to me just at the start there, and I know that when you were in college, you worked with Northwestern Mutual. Was that right? That was the first group.
That's correct. Yep.
And I get that you didn't like the sales side of it, which not all of us do. But you said there were some things about financial planning that intrigued you, and it got you to stay in the industry. What were those? Yeah,
so the interesting thing about Northwestern and their internship is they get you licensed to sell insurance, and they basically kind of tell you to go out and interview your friends and family, and you're there to start to try and sell insurance. And so I think the interviewing my friends and family part was interesting, just to ask them questions and kind of learn about them from that standpoint. And then the other thing that was interesting is they allowed me access to the financial planning software that they use. At the time, I don't know if this is still the case, but at the time, within Northwestern, you could actually build sort of a plan for a client, sort of to generate those sales, but you could actually build out a plan. And so I got the chance to kind of get into the software, and I just got really intrigued with all the moving pieces and parts of somebody's financial life and how to use that to, basically help them better their own lives. And helping people was always something that has been in my own DNA, right? It's been something that even since I was, little, I've always liked to help people. And so I figured that this industry allows you to do both of those things, is to use my intellectual capital to help people.
Yeah. So what is it about, though, helping people in the financial planning industry that you really enjoy or love?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a lot of things, but I think probably the biggest thing is just knowing that there is a lot of misinformation out there it's a complex world. It's only getting more complex. And so, for me, diving into the details is sort of a natural thing. And so being able to do the research and figure out some of these complex issues, and then use that to help somebody and really make a big impact, right? To help them, avoid mistakes, which I think is a lot of what financial planning is helping people avoid mistakes. And then further along in my career, probably the last 5 or 6 years or so, I've really gotten more intrigued by the psychological aspect of how we make decisions with money and our biases around money, our behaviors, and why we do the things that we do. And so that, is part of it that right now, I guess is really a big component of why I decided to use the financial DNA, is to be able to dive deeper into that, without having to become a psychologist on my own, right?
Yeah, but just going back a step, so we'll come to that piece in a minute, but do you think, though, that when you were at Northwestern Mutual and in the early part of your career, being able to access the financial planning software, plug in numbers, in a way, perform a bit of an intellectual exercise, modeling exercise on people's lives, was a pretty important way for you to connect to people, to be able to conduct those interviews, to understand them? Is that a lot of what was going on? And in a way, it was your vehicle. The technology, playing with the technology was your vehicle to helping people?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, right? I mean, I'm an extreme introvert. I don't do small talk very well. I'd rather get into a deep conversation with somebody about something intellectual. And so it was kind of a vehicle to be able to dive deeper into somebody's life and to help them with it. And so, yeah, the financial planning tool was just available to me. And I at the time, I didn't know exactly what I was doing, right? I was either in college or just fresh out of college. I hadn't had really many life experiences with money myself. So it was really just an intriguing component of what we're doing with the software.
But I think what you're also was saying is, unlike someone who might be just more of a salesperson, more extroverted, take the products the company offers, go and talk to everybody that they know, and hope something sticks for a sale. You bothered to do the research and get, apply your intellectual curiosity to really know what was going on and come up with the right solution for the clients. And that's a key part of your more structured approach. And then, I think where you were going is saying in the last 5 years or so, you've been more interested in the psychological process and behavioral biases going on. So what brought that on? What brought, if you want to call it behavioral finance or the psychological aspects to the table for you?
Yeah, so there may have been a few books before this, but the CFP board, the Certified Financial Planner Board, actually put together a book called Client Psychology. And it is a really interesting read, especially from a financial planner standpoint, to understand that if it were just as easy as taking the rules of thumb that are out there or what the textbook tells you to do, then financial planning wouldn't be such an issue. People could do it fairly easily, right? But the reality is that's just not the case. And the Client Psychology book was kind of my first introduction to really understanding how complex this is for people, and even the biases that we have that we're just completely unaware of, the learned behaviors that we have, the natural behaviors. So that was my first introduction to it, was this book. And then since then, I've read and done more research. Daniel Kahneman is a big researcher in this area, so I've listened to a number of his interviews and read a number of his books and research papers to learn more about it. So,
Yeah, so really, with financial planning, there's one level, there's the linear part of dealing with numbers, but ultimately it's not linear because we're dealing with humans, and
Yeah.
things happen out there in people's lives, and then they have reactions to it. And understanding how, to manage their reactions is important, how to communicate with the client. So I imagine that's really where financial DNA has stepped in for you.
That's exactly right. I would, before having this as a tool, I would incorporate these conversations with my client meetings. Really just kind of to talk about, and I still do, but talk about, what money was like for them growing up, right? To get a sense of like, what did you learn from your parents, either good or bad things about how to deal with money and saving, and whether or not that's a big impact, which for most people it still is a big impact even into their later adult years. And just to understand, like, what is their relationship with money? How do they see it? What do they see it as? And so those conversations, I couldn't get super deep with people, right? Like I said, I'm not a psychologist, right? I don't have that background or training. I understand, a decent amount of it, probably more than most, if not all of my clients, because of the research I've done, but I am not a psychologist. So those conversations were fairly surface level, and I always felt like I needed something else that could allow me to understand it better, like a tool to let me understand the individual better, especially because when you're asking people questions about stuff like that, they can be kind of guarded, and maybe not even quite be aware of it themselves. And so that was another aspect of is like, I'm not 100% sure if I'm getting the exact correct or true answer from them with even just my conversational questions. So,
yeah, I think that was a little bit what you just said was my experience, 20 years ago when I was a wealth manager myself in Australia, and I'd been a CPA for 10 years and I'd had the wealth management business for 4 or 5 years. But I knew that when clients came to see me, they wouldn't always be telling the truth. And it wasn't so much that they were lying or deliberately lying. I mean, there's always a little bit of that. There can be that. But it was more being guarded or not knowing what to say. Or if you said, what's your relationship to money, or how was money dealt with in your family, that's affronting to some people. When you bring up the word money itself, because it triggers all sorts of emotions. But I think the great thing I found with financial DNA, and I think you're alluding to, is it gives you a pathway in that's not directly about money at the start, but you end up in that, you end up there, but it gives you a vehicle to ask some of those questions, and then you can see the pattern starting to emerge.
Exactly.
Yep. And it makes it easier. So Ryan, when you got your financial DNA report back, you completed the discovery online, and just for our listeners, you can go to financialdna.com and take a trial, and you can do your own there and get a snapshot report. But Ryan, what came back? What was your aha moment with it? What was it saying to you about your financial DNA? Yeah,
the results. So I came out as a reflective thinker, which did not surprise me. That's definitely something I know about myself. I think one of the surprising things was that it went a little bit deeper into my own personal viewpoints on money, and even something that maybe I probably couldn't articulate it this way, or I certainly couldn't articulate it this way, but that I have a more content viewpoint on money and even status. And so I'm a little bit more amenable to just being content with where I'm at versus somebody that is on the opposite end of that spectrum, that is always trying to achieve more, is always trying to get more and grow more. And so that was a big aha for me, because it sort of informed kind of why I feel the way I do about certain things when it comes to my own personal financial situation.
In a way, it brought home your own comfort level with just having stability, having a more steady lifestyle, living in your community, and that working, for example, wasn't just about making the most money or building empires. It was more about if you want to call it a content lifestyle, looking after your family. Stability is important. That doesn't mean you're not ambitious.
Right.
But it can also say maybe you're not striving for things that are beyond your reach that like some other people do.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so it informed me. It's something I've thought about since then, periodically, in terms of where do I want to go? Because you're right, I still have aspirations to to do more and help more people and that sort of thing. But it's not really driven by a dollar figure, I guess, is kind of the point to me. It's like you said, if I can take care of my family, that's kind of the most important to me. I can check that box. Anything else is kind of just, gravy, so to speak. And so that was the biggest aha for me when I read my own report.
Yeah, but sometimes having that confirming insight can, in a way, make you more relaxed or content with who you are, rather than, well, should I be something different because A, B, C, D people across the street or the hallway are wired differently and doing something differently, and am I supposed to be like them? And at the end of the day, you're supposed to be like you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, for sure.
And what about what for you did it bring up about your planned nature? Because that's also a stronger part. You're quite planned and also very reflective. So what did it bring up about that for you?
Yeah, so that was the part of it that I think I've always known. Like I said before, I'm an introvert by nature. I like to kind of dive into a complex problem and just bury my head in it and do as much research as possible. That's true for my job as a financial planner. It's true in my personal life when I'm, trying to fix something around the house or whatever it might be, or just learn about something. So that the reflective thinker, the detailed, research oriented, is always something that's been pretty apparent to me. My wife would tell you that's true as well.
Yeah. And there's another dimension I think that's very important for you, being being a dad, which obviously you care, you care a lot about, being a father to a couple of young boys, but also, and a husband, but also for your clients, more around demonstrating empathy, connecting to people's feelings. So how do you approach that part of it in the planning relationship?
Yeah. I've always been a pretty strong empath myself. I've always liked helping people, and so getting into the planning side of things, I've always tried to think, and this kind of goes back to those conversations where you're not 100% sure whether or not you're getting the most truthful answer, or maybe somebody's being a little guarded, is to let people know that there's no shame. We all make mistakes. Everybody has, certain issues with money. And so my job isn't to judge you and say, well, you should be, you're this age, you should be this far along, and you're really far behind. It's just to meet you where you're at, right? Wherever that is, and to help you move forward, right? And make changes, make improvements, avoid mistakes, and relate to you as a human being, not to just regurgitate stuff that I've read in a textbook. And so, that I think is a really big part of what we do as financial planners, is to relate to people. I have my own, right? I'm a reflective thinker. I have my own biases around money. I have my own pitfalls and advantages, but that's not the truth for everybody else, right? Everybody else has their own unique nature around money, and so just relating to people and letting them understand that I'm not judging them, and just trying to let that guard down as much as possible. And I think you do that by just being a human being across the table from them, and like you said, empathizing with them.
Yeah, so it seems in a way you're able to relationize the money conversation for people and make them feel comfortable to have it with you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because it can be intimidating, like you said. It's a complex world, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's just it's hard to know what's the right thing exactly, and so as somebody that can come at it from an angle that is objective and has experience, right? That I think is an advantage that I can bring to the table for the client. And it's just a matter of let that guard down, let me in, tell me how you're feeling, tell me what you want, tell me what you're worried about, and let's move on from there. And so relating to them and being, like I said, a human being across the table, I think that's the best way you do that, is to let people know that it's okay, that I'm not going to judge you.
And do you think that's why the clients are coming to you? You've been in the business 17 years now, and in a way you've struck out of partnerships with others, and you've moved, in a way to be your own man, running your own business. So why the clients coming to you now?
Yeah. I think it's a matter of, I think the question is kind of a little bit of why are they attracted to me?
Yeah.
And why do they stick around? And so, what I hope is that the clients that have come to me and are attracted to me understand that side of it, that I want to help, that I'm practical and I'm objective, that I'm not going to judge them, that it's not a sale to be made, that it's a relationship to be had. Yeah. And in my opinion, hopefully a longer term one. And I think approaching it from that standpoint is what attracts people to work with me. And that's not for everybody, right? I think to maybe take that a little bit further is to say that, everybody's attracted to a different type of thing. Like, there are people out there that would rather just be sold on ideas and are just more transactional in nature. And that's fine too, right? That's just not the type of client that I'm generally going to attract.
Yeah, so you're attracting clients that want a fairly relational experience, sort of in a way, a humanizing money conversation, or human money conversation in a lot of ways. And that's seeming like, well, let me put it this way, is that more important, you feel, to the clients than the more scientific side of the planning process, which you're also capable of doing, from using the technology to, run the numbers in, model it out, deal with probabilities, get the numbers right. Which part of it do you feel like is stronger? Is it the humanizing part in terms of the conversations and the relationship building that's going on and the conversation, or is it still the more hardcore planning piece that still wins the day?
Yeah, my opinion would be that it is the relationship side, the human side of it, more so than the numbers. I think that comes from is still having the technical chops to be able to back it up, right? I don't think I could just be a super nice guy, but not have the technical chops and still attract and maintain clients. So I think, I've always thought of, when I'm speaking to clients, and I need to get across maybe a more complex solution, and it involves maybe tax jargon and things like that, is just to say, this is a little bit complicated, but I'm going to explain it to you so you understand the purposes behind it. Like, you don't need to necessarily know how the watch works. It's just about being able to tell what time it is. And so we can get you there. But that takes trust, right? I mean, I think you have to trust somebody to then go, yeah, I get that. And I think trust comes kind of one kind of pebble at a time, so to speak. And it takes time to build that trust. And I think you can speed the process along a little bit by being more human with people. But yeah.
But in a way, the client's accepting that you know the numbers and how to work the numbers and what the right solution is. It's about how it's conveyed, how it's communicated. Have you really understood them? That's really what you're saying is the bigger part of the planning, and why you've gone down the behavioural route is to be able to deal with that. Do the clients know that you're going to adopt more of a behavioural approach with them when they come to see you, or is that something that becomes a little bit of a surprise and you gently walk them into that?
Yeah, so I don't think for many people it'll be, or it has been a surprise, because, like I said, I've incorporated these kinds of discussions in the past. Maybe a little bit of a surprise that there's an actual tool that we'll be using to do that. But yeah, I've just kind of walked down that path of, this is just the next kind of progressive step towards understanding you better. And like you were just saying, in terms of the conversations, if I am sitting across the table from another reflective thinker that is detail oriented like me and likes to understand how things work,
yeah,
then maybe I do explain how the watch is made. Like, maybe I do explain that to them, and knowing that is really useful, right? Knowing that is really useful, because somebody on the opposite end of the spectrum that doesn't want to know all of those details, that could really turn them off. And so, yeah, I think that's, being able to gently walk them into like what this is for and why, and how it's going to help not only me, but them, I think people are really receptive to. And I think, frankly, from the conversations I've had so far, people are really intrigued by it. I think they kind of really like to know, like, what are the results of this test, and who am I? So,
well, at the end of the day, every person wants to be understood, and that's the number one thing for every human being. And I think if you can make them feel understood quickly, that can really accelerate the trust building in the process, and in a way, it gets you to being able to deal with the numbers side of it much more quickly and accurately, because you've got you're getting the right inputs to do that part of the process. How do you think the clients talk about you? You probably get quite a lot of clients from referrals.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Indeed.
What's the basis of the referrals? What's causing the clients to refer you, or what do they say when they're referring someone to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes I wish I could be a fly on the wall when that happens, so I know exactly what they're saying. But in the times that I've either received an email, been carbon copied, that sort of thing, where I can see what they're saying, in general, it's the trust aspect.
Yeah.
We've trusted Ryan for 10 years or 15 years to help us with this. We think you would trust him too, and we know he'd be a valuable resource for you. So I do think, not surprisingly, the relationships that I've built with these clients over the years is what they're referring me for, because they trust me, and they trust me enough to know if they're going to hand me off to somebody else that they love, or a good friend or a colleague, that they can trust that I'm going to do that same for them. Yeah.
And Ryan, as we wrap this up and just sort of pinpoint in on your identity, how do you want that, in a way, the world to see you, or to reflect back at you, in terms of what you're doing here in the wealth management space? You're clearly helping a lot of people in your community as well, adopting more of a relational approach to the money conversation. So, how do you want to be seen? What's the your X factor, how you're seen as different?
Yeah, that's another really good question. I think I would really like people to, if I was a fly on that wall and they were referring me to somebody in a conversation, I would hope that what they're saying is that Ryan is really trustworthy and reliable. He does what he says he's going to do. But then he's also a human being. He talks to you like a human being. And there's no judgment. He can empathize with your situation and really help you. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing for me in terms of judging how successful I am in this career, at least. It's really a matter of how much am I really helping my clients.
So, and in a lot of ways, sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I would hope that it's more help than, they could get by plugging a bunch of numbers into, for instance, a website, right? A robo-advisor, right? That those people that need the true help and guidance, the quote unquote hand holding, that's what I can do for you. And that's the way I've designed my practice. I'm not striving to necessarily work with the greatest number of people. I want to really impact the greatest number of people that I can do that for. And so that's what I would hope people would say about me and the type of people that are attracted to work with somebody like me.
Yeah, and a lot of what I've heard this afternoon as we've been talking about this, with your more content nature, which means that again, the lifestyle focus, taking judgment out of the process as well. It doesn't have to be about big goals. It's more about helping the client build that content lifestyle. In a way, you've taken the judgment out of the money conversation. I think is a big. That's the big differentiator for you. In what I've heard, because the rest of it, clearly you're very good at in terms of dealing with complexity, numbers, technology. Running the numbers, but the numbers don't mean much if the human being's not sorted out, and if they feel judged, they're not going to trust you. Exactly.
That's 100% true.
So just as we wrap up, Ryan, have you got any tips for our listeners today, whether it's, a prospective client or another financial advisor somewhere in the world who will be listening to this that you would like to convey?
Yeah, I think the reason I started down this path in using financial DNA was, like I said earlier, we need tools to be able to do the things that we do as planners, right? I need a software package to do financial planning in an efficient way, at least, to run the numbers. So we need these tools to help us really analyze and understand the numbers. And the same is true for the people. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, is we're helping people. And so we need to understand them as best that we can. And, I think if there's something lost, if you're not focusing on the behavioral aspect of finance. It's such a huge part of us as human beings, and it's complicated. It is really complicated. And we know money doesn't necessarily make us happy. And, so if it's just about striving for more and more money, then I think you're kind of losing something there. And I think if you talk to people enough, if you get to know them well enough, and if they trust you to get them to know them well enough, then you'll learn that there's more behind it. I think most human beings also want to help others, right? Have that side of them. And maybe they just don't know exactly how to do it, or if they can do it. And so just being able to talk to them and understand them enough to guide them down that path, it's more than just achieving a goal, right? It's more than just achieving retirement. There's just more to it than that.
Yeah, I think you made a very important point that, it's the behavioral issues in a way that are the complex part of financial planning. And if you can address those, then you can make financial planning far less complex. and at the end of the day, you end up with a happy client, and that's what you're doing.
Yep, exactly. Well
so
said.
Ryan, thank you for spending time with me this afternoon. It's been great to talk with you and get to know you a bit better, and I'm going to enjoy seeing you conquer the area of behavior and money conversations for many years to come.